Mic check, 1, 2, mic check, 1, 2. Mic check, 1, 2, mic check, 1, 2. So we're getting good audio. Mic check, 1, 2, mic check, 1, 2. Matt, if you can hear me, everybody is going to be on one microphone that's going to be passed back and forth. That's our only audio feed that we are able to have.
So remember, your phones go on the front table right next to the DJ booth. Trust me, we'll pick them up and we'll get them a place where they can get placed. We got 2 minutes, we're gonna get started, about 2 minutes. Make sure you check out the vendors. There's some cool things being sold, and we got cool prizes. Bonnie's offering the cool prize in the back. Check out all your vendors. If you need conversation starters, we got those as well. 2 minutes.
Thank you, my friend. I wanted to remind you.
1 minute, 1 minute. About 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
Well, can't go nowhere. It's not TikTok.
All right, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Hopefully that's you able to find your seats here. We want to go ahead and get started. I think you all will be pleasantly surprised by this lunch session. Lunch is going to be delivered, eat up, eat up. We want to make sure everybody stays fully nourished so that you can make it through the last half of this day. So I am privileged to have an esteemed panel of individuals that I can say I personally have worked with or know. So we're going to do that, but before we do that, this lunch panel would not be possible without one of our sponsors. So TDS Fiber is sponsoring this lunch panel. So join me in giving them a round of applause for the sponsor. With that, I want to introduce somebody who I've also had the opportunity to work with fairly closely. Mr. Devon Hayes is the field marketing manager for TDS Fiber. He's going to we're going to co-host this panel. And so what I hope that you all take from this is, this panel is eloquently titled Leaders of the New School. So a lot of times in the business place, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are leaders at the top who have to enforce or make intentional decisions about where an organization is going to go. And what I wanted to do in this space is expose you to some of the decisions that they have to make in order to get there. So that's the idea of the panel today. Here's what will happen. Between Devon and I, we'll flip back and forth. We'll ask the panel questions. To our panel guests, what we'll do is, I would hope that at least two of you all can answer the question at any given time, unless it's directed directly to you. If it's 4 or 5, that's great. And again, I told these panelists they are not prepared. They don't know what we're going to ask because I wanted the situation to be organic. All of them have agreed to be on this panel. I will tell you this, here's a secret. There are a couple of CEOs, presidents on this panel that are introverts. Okay? Believe it or not, in high-level positions. This is not something that they would do on a normal situation. So thank you all for that. So give this panel a round of applause before we start here. So with that, what I want to do here is we're going to give you a couple of minutes, introduce yourself, who you're with, and tell us why, to start off, this hour is important to you. Right? So I'll start from my far right. So I'll start with you.
All right, thank you. Oops. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I know a lot of you. My name is Bob Wilneth. I've been president at Rocky Mountain College for 10 years. I came from healthcare, so this is a little bit different. And the question is why DEI is important to Rocky Mountain College?
Yes, sir.
The DEI has to be important to Rocky Mountain College. It has to be, right? We are the college of the open door. We don't turn anybody away unless there may be a problem with their scholastic achievement, or there could be a concern that they might not be successful. But we are open to everyone. Some may say we don't have a choice, but that's who we are. I think the key, and I'm probably going to reflect on this later with a question or two if I'm asked, is how we treat people. I think that's the key. I'll briefly reflect on one of the things that we're working on, and that's closing equity gaps, which is so important in higher ed, and I suspect Stephanie is going to address that as well. We have to identify those gaps first. I don't know if this conference will help us do that or not, but I will tell you, this conference is more for me than the college. It's more for my growth as the leader of the institution.
That was tough to follow. Great job, Bob. You're supposed to save that for later. My name is Kyle Palmer, ex-Billings resident of 10 years, 2007 to 2017. I am the co-owner of Parker's Pharmacy in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. acquired the #1 reading and math franchise in the world by the name of Kumon. So balancing two entities currently, but this work is extremely important to myself because I immerse myself in a different culture by accepting a scholarship to Billings, Montana to play college basketball.
I played college basketball at MSUD. I love the experience. But I am wearing a academia green tie that I finished up my education degree in elementary ed at Rocky Mountain College. So it's love between both. But so yeah, DEI is important to me just because I care, right? And leading the organizations that I'm a part of, I'm consciously aware of who's on the team. Are their voices heard? And that's a constant message that we have weekly at our pharmacy, is making sure that our staff is heard. So I know we'll dive in deeper to it, but my name is Kyle.
Hi there, I'm Stephanie Hickswa. I have been the Chancellor of MSU Billings for just over 2 years. DEI is important to MSU Billings because of many of the reasons that Bob said it's important for Rocky. We serve many non-traditional students who are older students coming back to college. We serve students who are the first in their families to have ever even considered college. And we serve students who are low income. That's why inclusion is important. That's why it's important that we close equity gaps. We are doing some really great work that I'm excited about in getting students to be retained and graduate. And I'm proud to share with you that this semester, we increased our retention of Native American students by 19%. Increase the retention of our military-affiliated students by 11.1%. I have some amazing people that I get to work with, and many of them are in the audience today who are doing this work. For me personally, though, the reason why this is important work to me is I was a low-income, first-generation student that was considering going to college, and I went and talked to my high school counselor, and he said, you can't go to college, you can't afford it. So I never want any student ever to feel that is a barrier for them to belong somewhere that can help them have a better life.
It's tough to follow all of this. This is an impressive crew up here, and I'm honored to be with it. My name is Matt Buny. I'm the CEO of Aware Incorporated. My interests in DEII are personal and professional. I think my personal life drives the interest in professional. First, my wife and love of my life for 27 years is Pacific Islanders. So with that, we have four children, 4 boys, and raising a family of brown people in Montana gives me some interest into the world of people that are a minority. It drives some of the work. Well, also, 2 of my children have disabilities. So with having a disability, it drives the work we do at Aware with our mission of helping people live independent lives, helping people live as independently as possible. We deliver mental health services, developmental disability services, early childhood through Early Head Start. We have several of our directors in the audience right now that can speak to the details of what we deliver. But that work and advocating for 5,000 people every year, or allyship with 5,000 people every year to help them live independently is what we do. And hopefully we'll be able to get into some of those details. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Can everybody hear me at the back? And I'm sure you can all hear that I'm not a Montanan resident. I've been here for 2 years from South Africa. My name is Wayne Robinson. I lead the Sibanye-Stillwater mining operations up near Nye and up at the East Boulder sites. And I guess two things that I'm going to reflect on. I think you'll all agree that mining, specifically in the modern generation, is not perceived as a great career. So that brings in one of the aspects of why DEI is critical for us as a business. And secondly, it is historically a male-dominated environment. So again, critical for us to ensure that we're successful in terms of making sure that we become diverse, equity, and we inclusive. So that's internally as a operation. We have around 2,000 full-time employees, but as a global company, we have 85,000 employees. And each and every single one of those individuals can contribute to the business if they're included and if their voices are heard. And again, a critical factor for us internally in the business. But then, externally as an organization, as a global group, we look at what we call grey elephants. And these are key macroeconomic themes that are out there in the world. Very difficult to pinpoint exactly what they are, but things like aging populations, is something that we find challenging as well, and we can see it in our workforce, aging workforces. Things like angry people, I think we'll all agree, you see angry people, all over the show, a lot of social unrest in different parts of the world. We talk about things like the angry planet. We were subject to that last year with the floods up in the Stillwater River. We talk about multipolarity, where you get very divisive groupings. So all of these, as an organization, we need to be able to deal with those challenges. And in my mind, they can only really be successfully and sustainably overcome through proper DEI. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Last but not least, my name is Nick Wong, and my least favorite thing is introducing myself. So here I am. I'm a certified public accountant, CPA. Was born and raised in Billings. I've been doing accounting for about 9 years. Worked for a couple firms, and in 2023, kicked things off and started my own firm. So we have the fun light-up sticks that I've been passing out to people. I'm super excited to be here. Diversity, equity, inclusions means a lot of things to me. Personally, Asian American growing up in Montana, didn't realize I was not like everybody else until I think it was like 5th or 6th grade. Like a friend asked me, like, how do you cook rice? And I was like, you have a rice cooker. Everyone has a rice cooker. And it was that day I found out not everybody had a rice cooker at home. But I remember that very distinctly, and I look back at it. It was a funny experience, but it was sort of the beginning of realizing like there are differences, and I've been always kind of oblivious as well to hey, I think somebody might be treating you a little differently, and you just don't think about it. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this event, these conversations. I'm really excited to start my new business. I used to primarily, at my old firms, work primarily with Native American tribes. We've continued that with my new firm as well. We do a lot of work with Native American tribes. We're looking to do more work with nonprofits, and we do our work a lot differently. We want to work with people. We're not just drop off your tax returns. We don't even want to do that. We don't even want to touch that kind of stuff. We want to work with people. We don't have an office. We want to come to you. We want to talk to you, work face to face, and do business a little bit differently. So it's a competitive advantage to us too. And it's no secret, accountants as a breed, we're sort of dying out. We're aging, just like a lot of things in America, and there's not enough accountants coming up behind it to replace it. So we're having all sorts of talent gap shortages. You've got people that want to retire and get out of firms, and how do you replace that, do it better, do it faster? And there's just an increasing need for what we're doing. So how do you solve all that without thinking about things differently, approaching things differently? How are you staffing? How are you incentivizing people? And how are you using people? Because a lot of people don't want to do the kind of work that was, accounting 10 years ago. Nobody wants to sit and do maybe mindless entry, and they want to do things that excite them. So how do you marry all those things and to deliver what people still need? So
anyways, back to the moderators. Appreciate you guys.
Is a lesbian. And so I grew up with all of those things as a part of my life, and so to see this room filled with so many people willing to learn about this information, it just really warms my heart. So can we just give it up for everybody in this room, please? The first question is, can you briefly explain some of the initiatives your organization is doing in the DEI space?
One of the things that we did at MSU Billings, once I started realizing there were different pockets of things going on all over campus, is I put together a task force to look at what we're doing well, where the gaps are, and to give me some recommendations for ways that we could expand this work and do more. And the really cool thing, Devon, that happened is I put the task force together. They gave me the deliverables. The white paper that they put together was, these academics, they're so smart. It's so fun to work with them. It was fantastic. And I thought, okay, we can take off from here. But that's not where it stopped. They said, we want to continue this work, Stephanie. Would it be okay if the task force turned into a committee and we met regularly and worked on these issues? How fabulous is that? So that's just one example to share. Bob, did you want to answer as well?
Safe space training is one example.
Because I don't know if people, no pun intended, are aware of what AWARE does. And I think it's important that they understand the space that you work in. So talk a little bit about AWARE and what you do specifically related to mental health. Because that's another form of DEI that I don't think it's talked about.
I broke it. We're that quiet partner, but very critical in the services I believe that we deliver. I think if you talk to our staff that are here in the room, it's helping people connect, people with mental illness connect to their communities. For kids, it's the ability to stay in home at school and out of trouble. It's for adults to be able to live, work, and recreate and have opportunities for that, just like all the rest of us. So it's important work, and we need advocacy. The funding for mental health services, especially through Medicaid, is it's improving, but we're not quite there yet to be able to address what Wayne brought up is to keep attract and retain that workforce. We're all seeing workforce pressures, and DEII is very important for being able to attract and keep that stable workforce so that we can help people connect to communities and continue our mission.
Yeah, the next one, and again, this is for anybody on the panel. What challenges have you faced due to your commitment to DEI?
Developing a startup company for us was a challenge. Two African American men, and in Louisiana, and I'm sure there's other places across this nation, there's a notion that's out there that we face that, can I do business with this black-owned business? And that's very present, so a good friend of mine from Montana that I met here, great guy, I asked him, is he ready for that change? And he moved to Louisiana, and the roles reversed for him quickly. It didn't stop our growth because of who we are as people. Type A, we're okay with talking with anyone. However, sorry about that. However, everything that we did was intentional. Our marketing schemes, our marketing plans were intentional with who we display in our marketing. Black, white, Asian, it didn't matter. So over time, non-blacks came to Parker's Pharmacy. But that's definitely a challenge that we continue to face daily, is by saying, hey, you can do business with this black-owned business without saying that, but displaying it in our efforts in marketing and our community involvement, and that's critical to go where they are and let them hear what we have to say. So we face them daily, but we try to navigate.
Henry said it wouldn't be any difficult question. I have the email right here, William. All right. Let me comment on that. The toughest person or thing that I've had to deal with is myself. Let me explain. When I was informed that we were having safe space training at the institution, I was not happy. I was not happy. And then I found out we've been doing it for a couple of years. So it tells you where the power is at the college, right? So much of I believe, who we are, what we are, is based on the environment we grew up in. It's based on how we were raised. The last thing I like doing, and I told William I wanted to do this if I had the opportunity to talk about myself, but I'm going to for about 2 minutes. I'm from outside Chicago, so I have Midwest values of honesty, of humility. I grew up in a very, very strict Catholic family. You have to understand, in the 70s, these are high-end Catholics, right? I had no fun growing up, right? No fun, right? But in me was put some pretty strong morals that everybody gets treated well and everybody gets treated the same. My previous career
was as a heart surgeon in this town for maybe 20 years or so. And when you do heart surgery, you make an incision, you go through the bone, you go through the fat, and you get to the heart, right? Here's something for you. Everybody bleeds the same, right? 99% of the time, everybody's anatomy, the structure, and physiology, how the heart works, is exactly the same. My journey, quote unquote, and I owe a lot of this to people like William Henry, Clark Sturgis, Sarah. I pronounce your last name Sarah, but I think I'll mess it up. My journey has told me to think a little bit north of the chest and the brain. We are not the same. We're not. We think differently because of our past. We process differently. Some things mean more to us than other things. And I've actually had to learn that. I've had to learn that. In fact, since I still have the microphone, I'll share with you, it's even affected my personal life with my wife of 35 years, who's redecorating our house, and we're going to go broke over this. But that's what's important to her. That's what's, I could live in a dorm, right? But that's what's important to her. And I mean that. I mentioned that this is for me, right? Because I'm still on that journey. But I will tell you, there is one thing that will not change, and one thing we need more of, and that's decency and grace. And please. All right, thank you.
From this perspective, because I know at Montana State buildings, university buildings, you all are doing some work in the inclusion space. I don't want to mess this up. I know you at a higher education level. I know you have the council, but there's something more surgical and acute that you're doing, and I don't want to butcher it. So talk to me about that work, because I think for organizations, I think people think that learning has to be in a higher education institution. Talk about your work, and I think the audience can take something from that as well.
Thank you, William. This is hard work. And as Bob said, you really have to examine who you are and who your values are, and it's hard to be vulnerable. So, like I was telling you about who our student population is, they are really vulnerable, and they have a lot going on in their lives. So one of the things that we've been doing, and the task force that I charged with this has really taken off. We have a Center for Teaching and Learning on our campus that does professional development for faculty to help them with their pedagogy. Pedagogy is a fancy word for teaching methodology. So we are working on teaching methodologies in this space. So Matt was talking about mental health. There are students that have experienced trauma and have mental health issues. We have to make sure that our teaching methodology isn't making them feel uncomfortable in the classroom, because guess what? They will drop out. There is no reason for them to come back to a place that they are uncomfortable. We're also doing some culturally responsive pedagogy to make sure that we're talking about different kinds of things, that we're looking at different kinds of authors, that we're not just teaching very traditional curriculum. The purpose of higher ed is to help people critically think and analyze, and that means having tough conversations. So those are some really exciting things that are happening for our faculty, for them to take into the classroom. And then, and I think it was Matt or Wayne that was talking about retaining employees and how important it is. I want us to be a good place to work. I want people to feel like they belong at MSUB, whether they're students or whether they're faculty or whether they're staff. So we're working really hard on our staff and faculty retention efforts to make sure that they feel like they belong. And some of our marketing, you were talking about marketing, Kyle. Some of our marketing is really geared to be, MSUB, get it? Belong. Become be you at MSUB, and that applies to students and our employees.
Is asking what kind of decisions or actions have you guys taken at an executive level to specifically address equity within your organizations?
Yeah, let me have a go at that. Look, part of the analysis that we did on symbols of exclusion, is really goes around how we conduct interviews. Who's on an interview panel? How do we make them sort of gender, race, whatever? How do we make those interviews neutral? So that's the one side of it. The other side. And there's been lots of debate. Do you set yourself specific targets? In other words, do you want to be, do you want the leadership team and every team at the different levels in your organization to represent the demographics of the state or the county that you're in? So we haven't got there yet, but there's a very strong focus on making sure that we move towards representing the demographics of the communities within which we live.
And Nick, I want to ask you from this perspective, given that you all are younger entrepreneurs, and now there's 5 generations in the workplace, how are you customer facing? How are you bridging that gap as an employer? And how are you attracting new talents? And again, just want to know, because I think we forget sometimes that a huge part of this diversity walk is we are trying to figure out how to meld an 18-year-old and a 68-year-old working in the same environment. One used to facts and one doesn't have a clue what a fax is, right? So how do you all, as young entrepreneurs, young business owners, again, mature but young business owners, how do you all combat that? Or what are you seeing in that space?
That's a great question. For us at Parker's Pharmacy, I'll give an example, first of all, but to answer it in short, being intentional, right? So as I learn about the workforce and the baby boomers after they retire, they still want to be active. So we have free delivery service, right? We don't deliver to Montana, but if you are kind of close, maybe a couple hours, anyway, but we have this delivery service, right? And you would think that it would be a position for a young, energetic male or female that can be active and get all the deliveries done for the day. So as the COO, I told myself that I need to open up my thinking, and it doesn't have to be what I thought it needed to be. And back to the baby boomers, where we were getting applicants that were 50, 60 years old. They wanted to do something and be a part of the organization. So in short, I hired 3 50-plus-year-old delivery drivers, right? So I think being leaders in organization, we have to be intentional about what we need. And now I get the opportunity to market that, hey, we hire 50-year-old women in this role, right? So intentionality is the answer in short as far as how we're handling it at Parker Pharmacy.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the age thing, Will. I think that's a big part of diversity, equity, inclusion that sometimes is overlooked. That age is a big gap, and it's something hard to overcome. And like right now, I'm sure some of you are like, who's the 12-year-old on the stage with all the adults, right? So this is something I face a lot. I can't remember why I was in this school, but I get stopped if I'm walking into school, near a school. They're like, hey, can't be out here, can't have a phone, whatever. I remember I was working on a school district audit, and I was walking in the hallway. I even had my suit and tie on, and I got in trouble with the secretary, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I thought you were the new basketball recruit. And I was like, strike 2, like I'm 5'6", like, but bridging this gap, and it was actually recently too, a visit to the MSU Billings Accounting Club. I went with some former coworkers from the firm I was at, and I realized that I was no longer part of the cool young group, because they, like the rest of the group was saying like, well, he can probably answer that, or like, oh, well, there's computers in all the classes now, and like maybe they weren't, you know, we didn't have the projectors when you were here, Nick. I'm like, okay, it wasn't that long ago, but there was not a projector here, so. But it is interesting, because like, I'm no longer in the bottom rung of my career. I'm in a position regularly where I'm consulting with people usually older than me, and they've usually hired me in at a rate that, you know, maybe they don't even make. And, you know, they're trying to say, like, is this guy credible? Should we take advice from him? Like, what is this guy's real credentials like when we're just looking at this baby face? And then that's what you face externally with your customers, right? You're trying to convince them that you have the credentials to do something, that you have the background to help them. And all you can do sometimes is, you know, put your head down, go to work. Let the work speak for itself. Let them get to know you as a human. Let them get to know your work, and then let them decide. Sometimes you know, the first impression ends up being way different than what they think of you much later. But on the internal side, I've also been in the position where I'm trying to hire, you know, Gen Z, trying to get them in, you know, help them build in their careers. And then I became leader of a department at the firm I was at, and I was a senior manager there for several years, which, if you guys aren't familiar with public accounting roles, because nobody is, senior managers are the ones right below partners. And it was an interesting position, because I was managing a couple folks younger than me, 24, 25. I was managing a couple folks older than me. They were 32, 33, 34. And then I had another guy hired into my team who was 55. And, you know, that was a conversation that had to be had with him when he was getting hired in. They were like, hey, look, so Nick's the guy. Are you okay with that? How is this going to work? And we had to navigate that, you know, and I think it takes respect, and it takes being intentional, like Kyle said. I thought that was really good. You know, I don't know everything. He doesn't know everything. There's a reason I'm doing this. There's a reason he's doing that. And I guess I always just try to be open. I know that I have something to learn from everybody. I don't know it all. And I think that that's a stereotype that's cast upon people of my age group for sure, and maybe in the people that are in positions similar to mine. They're like, well, they think they know everything. So being able to break down that barrier really quickly in conversations with people has gone a long way for me personally to help bridge that gap of like, hey, I don't know everything, but let me show you some of the things I do know. Let's talk about what you know as well. And that works both with customers for me, and it also has worked with coworkers for me. And we find that, hey, maybe we are both, you know, have some strengths. We can come together. We can both contribute to this overall thing. And there's a reason we're both here. There's a reason we're both here doing this. It's because you're good at that, I'm good at this. And if we're not in the best roles and we're not both convinced of that, we're not going to be able to work together that well. But if we can get convinced that this is the right setup, you know, are you the right leader of the team, or am I the right leader of the team, you can get a lot done. So.
I want to put out before Cal speaks. I hope you all noticed, for those of us who are 40 plus, 50 years old. I just wanted to point that out. I didn't say that. The younger gentlemen on the stage said it. I just want to point that out.
I'm not going to tell a story that you wanted to tell. I'm not going to tell that story.
Please don't.
So a few months back, as I was pursuing this acquisition, I reached out. I just put it out on Facebook because my current accountant that does all of the pharmacy side of things couldn't cross over to do this acquisition or the accounting services for the new acquisition. So I put it on Facebook. Hey, I'm looking for a local accountant just to stir up some things and see if I have some friends in this space. Nick comments, hey, I'm here for you. I know I'm out of town, but I'm here for you. So I thought about it. Now, just so you guys know, don't let the baby face fool you. He's an elite accountant, and I trust him enough. So I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Let me give Nick a call. So basically, long story short, every week for the past 3 or 4 months, we've been on the phone together handling business. So I think we have these preconceived notions about how people look. to say, hey, I don't know if they can give me this service that I actually need until we actually do business with them. So I just wanted to tell you guys that Nick is the greatest at what he does, and I know he's going to get better at it. So yeah, thank you.
The community that we live in is a welcoming one, an inclusive one. If you're not from this area, what brought you here and what ultimately made you stay?
I was going to say that question must be targeted at me. Yeah, so I was brought in here to lead up the mining operations at Stillwater, and again, when it comes to DEI, some of the comments around being intentional, as you say, it's a path we're on, and we just need to make sure that we get that intentionality, through to the different levels in the organization. And again, what one of my observations is coming in from the outside is that this has been, in my mind, over politicized, and it has some seriously negative challenges, and that's where some of our resistance is coming in. We're again in a South African context, totally different social issues that the country's dealing with there. So again, you've got to come into a lot of these situations with with humility, and as I say, as has already been commented, there's got to be a lot of intentionality about what you're doing. Thank you.
What brought you here, and what ultimately made you stay?
Well, work brought me here. Well, work brought me here. The Billings Clinic was looking for a heart surgeon. My two younger brothers said, "Do they even do heart surgery in Montana?" So that'll tell you a little something. It's I'm personally grateful and blessed. Right, I've had 2 careers, and we've raised a family with a couple daughters, who are gone. They're okay, but
They're no longer under your
everything's fine.
Bob's hilarious. For me, of course, it was the basketball scholarship to MSUD, right? Great school. Come on, Bob. We're gonna get there. But I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, single mom, 3 boys, educator. She's an educator, and very tough environment. I'm 37 now, and I've been able to accept it, right? But when I got here, I was still so raw. And I'm seeing older faces, not age, but who I was connected with in the past, and I'm thinking to myself, I hope, my rawness wasn't an offense to them, right? But when I arrived in Montana, I was accepted. It was a very slow pace that I needed because it allowed me to reflect and build, right? Ran across the racism, of course, but I ran across that more in Louisiana, to be completely honest. But the city embraced me. I stayed here for 10 years. I had to love it, besides the negative weather every year. But I still love it. I take my family. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old daughter, so we try to get here at least once a year, take them on hikes. I was just branding some cattle in July up here at a friend's house. So just good, genuine people. However, I think an issue that I have noticed being an out-of-towner in Montana is that we're not spending enough time with each other, right? In Louisiana, we have the divide of black and white. So immediately when I came to Montana, I saw the divide of white and Native American. And for me, all I can see is that, because I'm the type of person, I'm going to navigate and talk to everyone. Thanks to my mom, that's how she is. But it just seems to me as if this is an issue worldwide, is that we're judging, but we're not even spending enough time to actually know that person. And over my 10 years in Montana, I met some great people, but I spent time with each of them, yourself included, to actually know a little bit about you, right, before I can even come up with some type of judgmental thoughts. So, yeah, so that's why I stayed. It was a welcoming place, and I still love it.
Each of you all, so this is rapid fire. I'll give you each 1 minute to answer the question. There are, I think the last time I counted was last Friday, there are 41 business organizations or higher institutions represented in this room today. 41. I would venture to guess that all of them are not on the same journey you are on, as far as DEI is concerned. So in 1 minute or less, if you had to tell them something about your DEI experience to get them on the journey, what would that thing be? And anybody can go first. Everybody has to go 1 minute or less.
Race. It's not a race.
Be uncomfortable and ask the hard questions.
They were definitely less than 1 minute. I think with approaching, this is a message to myself as much as it is to anybody. It's approaching situations, people that are different, whether it be color, whether it be age, whether it be disability, visual or not visual, to approach other people with curiosity, kindness, have an open mind.
Yeah, I think you've already heard. It's really, in my mind, it's a business imperative to be able to really energize, 2,000 employees that we have, and to be able to retain them and to be able to attract people that will be openly welcomed into that working environment. In my mind, is what can drive the operations and operational effectiveness and sustainability. So in my mind, it's a business imperative.
Yeah, I guess as the account.
The group, I'd say measure it, measure what matters, and 2, put your money where your mouth is. Make sure you have budgets set aside for it. Make sure you're spending resources if you say it matters. So.
Oh, okay. So the question is, for the organizations that are not on this journey, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them? Why should they be on this journey?
Okay, so I just finished up a
leadership program in Louisiana, trying to mobilize people to do tough challenges and thrive, which I think we all face every day. But one thing that I learned was the cycle of observe, interpret, and intervene. Right? So when we're in our roles at our organizations, we have to observe what is going on, whether we are in a position to make true change or not. But after you observe it multiple times, and you can't just observe it once and think you have the solution. The observation process actually takes a good amount of time. And then after you observe that, interpret that data, what you observe, and then come up with a plan. And it repeats itself over and over again. So there's no true ending in these roles that we're in because everything is forever evolving. So observe, interpret, and intervene is what I would recommend to the 41 organizations here.
A round of applause to the panel. And lastly, I want to thank Devon Hayes from TDS Fiber and TDS Fiber for sponsoring this lunch panel. I hope for those of you all who have not been in this space, I would highly encourage you all to engage with those that are. Again, I think a lot of times this information gets misguided because it's put in the wrong hands. And what we're really trying to do, if you think about this, we all have an end goal. Our end goal is to make sure humans are treated appropriately. That's the end goal, right? We can fancy it up, we can make it sound how we want, But a lot of times I think that gets misguided because of other things that get in the way. We politicize it, we sensationalize it. All these things get in the way. But our end goal is to ensure that people are treated appropriately. If we take that to the bank, I think we can cash that check. So with that, so here's what we have, right? So 1:15 starts our afternoon sessions. So we're going to split this one. Did everybody have enough to eat? We're good? We're good? All right. I feel sorry for the 1:15 presenters because now you got 4 people going to classes. Good luck with that. So we're gonna go to those classes. If